Hello and welcome. And in today's video I'm going to be moving all of my sanke koi fry over into sort of their temporary homes whilst they're growing to about 1 inch in length. Now the plan is today is to move them into 3 separate different ponds just so that they can grow to about 1 inch in length so that I can decide which ones I want to keep from their patterns. Now this first pond is just a small pond I have outside with a lovely coverage of lily pads that provide good shade for the fish in the sun, and also plenty of hornwort underneath these lily pads which provide great oxygenation for the fish and also a lot of cover for them to hide in between. The next pond is a slightly smaller pond that is still completely fine for growing the fish. It has some beautiful swords that are currently growing up from the ground and it is currently in bloom, so it has some really nice pink and purple flowers currently coming out from its stems. Now, the pond may look pretty small, but it is more than adequate to grow these fish to about 1 inch in length, and it is full of natural daphnia in the water column for the fish to eat. Now onto the third and final pond, which is actually my original starting koi pond where I had my first koi fish. Now it was more run down now, but it still has some beautiful lily pads and actually blossom on the surface from a neighbouring tree. It also has a beautiful bush that sort of drips into the water. The bush is sort of overgrown down into the water, but the roots provide a really nice sort of natural hiding spot for the fry and also help clean the water as well. So we've left it so it can sort of grow into the water. So the plan for removing them is very simple. First, I'm going to shake the brushes that are in the spawning area and remove any fry from those. And then after I've done that, I'm going to remove any leftover and put them into their new homes. I've got this small tub here. Well, it's not small, but fairly small tub that I'm going to be using to rinse off the brushes. First, I just want to get them out and then one by one, sort of dip them in here and shake them off just so I can get all the fry off. The only issue I may have is that the brushes are currently tied together. I will try to shake them as much as I can when I pull them out, just to make sure I can get out as many of the fry as I can. But when they're this small, they have a tendency to sort of stick to things, like they'll stick to like any surface you pull out of the water. So I just need to make sure I get them all off the brushes. That's basically the plan with this. So I need to get to work on sort of brushing off all the fry from each brush. So I filled the bucket up to put the fish into. I've removed the air pump and the poles. What I'm going to try and do is just give the net a good shake in the water and then slowly pull it out, just to give them a chance to swim out of the net, in case they are in there. And then any that are left, I'll just shake the net in that bucket to get any excess off, but I think they should all basically come out of it with that tactic, hopefully. So then I got to work on removing the brush. I took it out and gently shook it in the bucket, just to remove any excess fry. At this point I realised there was still quite a few on the brushes, so I took it round to the pond so that it was a bit easier to remove them, so they could go straight into their new habitat. At this point I should probably tell you the plan for the fry. I reckon I'll put about 2/3 in this pond, and then the last third I'll split, so I'll put a little bit more in the slightly bigger pond, and a very few of them in the slightly smaller pond. I'm just going to try and split them up so they all have enough space in each of the ponds they're put into. Now in terms of these fry, they're all doing quite well. There was quite a few here you can see that I shaked from the bucket. Now these are all sanke fry, as you can see here, and I reckon about 400 or 500 were in the brush, and there's still a few thousand left in the spawning area. But from the 500 I got from there, I just chucked them into the outside pond and also into the indoor pond, just so that these ones could get a start in the pond rather than leaving them in the bucket. And in no time at all, they were already starting to peck around at the plants and swimming around in the pond quite happily. At this point though, I ran out of daylight, so I came back the next day to finish the task. Upon arriving the next day, it appeared that all the fry were quite happy and were quite settled in the pond. They were swimming around, sort of gently grazing on the side, and there's really no issues. Quite a lot of them as well were using the lily pad as just sort of a cover. There was quite a lot of them underneath there, which was a good sign. It meant they were using the shade and that they were quite happy in the pond. So with this, I carried on with what I was doing. So, it is now the next day. I've put the majority of the fry that I wanted to put into the 2 smaller vats in already, but I basically just ran out of daylight to move the rest of them out. So I just left them in there in the meantime. They're still doing quite well. A bit of algae has formed, but I mean apart from that, underneath they're all doing quite well. So the plan is today to basically move the majority of the fry that are in this net just straight into the pond which is over there. I'll put maybe like a scoop in that net, that pond out there, just to put a couple more in there. But the vast majority I'm just going to be chucking straight into that pond out over there. But before we do that, let's give these guys a little feed. They're quite hungry at the moment because it's quite warm. But yeah, they're all doing well. Very great colours coming out of these guys. Now the majority of the fish that are in here are just the ones I'm trying to get rid of, just in terms of space. The majority of the goldfish that are in the pond are in here. As you can see, there's a large amount of comet goldfish in this tank. There's 1, 2, 3, like there's at least 20, 30 plus in here. And there's also quite a few of these sort of ogoni type koi here that I picked up from Buyer Koi Farm a while back. But there is also 2 fish in here. There's Yamabuki Ogon, and then where is he? Well, not he, it's a she, but I call it Fred for some reason. This one here, there you go, these 2. I have these in here just because they're just extremely friendly, really. So it's nice to have them in here just from a, you know, seeing them come up point of view. But yeah, these guys are doing great in here. I also got some nice underwater footage of the fry. From this, you can see, you know, the large volume of fish that are actually in the net still. This was just literally a corner of the fish, and in there was still like hundreds just sort of sitting in a corner. So this was a good sign for me. They were still doing well, and it was time to get them out, in my opinion. Now the plan is very simple. I've got a bucket here, I've got this net, and I'm just going to try and scoop up as many of the fry as I can with the net from the vat here. And then once I've got out like as many as I can possibly see from the area, I'm going to then sort of peel back the net from one side, drag it across, and then scoop out what's left in that net. And then once all the fry are in that bucket, I'm just going to put them, you know, distribute them between the pond that's outside there and then the small pond that's over there. So that's sort of the brief plan, and that's what I'm going to try to do now. I just removed the top layer of algae that was sort of sat on the top, and now you can really see sort of all the, if it focuses, you can see all the fry that are swimming along the top. If it would focus, there you go. Now, like I said, there's about probably 1,000, 2,000 left in here. I've already removed about 1,000 of them, I reckon. And these are sanke fry. Well, from what I know, these are all sanke fry. So hopefully the plan is if I can move them all into the pond and such, they should do quite well. Now, I was going to move a couple more into that pond, the smaller one out there, but I reckon I'm just going to put them all into that pond out there because there's not as many as I thought there were. So there's definitely more than enough space out in that pond on the other side to hold all these fish, at least until they grow to about 1 inch in length. So that's basically the plan with these guys. And in the net here, actually, you can get quite a good view of them. As you can see, if I pull the net up a bit, there's quite a large amount of them in this net. Just all sort of swimming about. Have nice yellow tint to them, which is nice. But yeah, I'm going to move these guys over into the tub now. I've realised with the amount of water in here, it's kind of hard to get all the fish out. So what I'm going to do is just pull up this side of the net, just to sort of lift the bottom of the tank up and make it a bit easier to get them out. I've just pulled the net up here slightly, just to make my job just a little bit easier. It just sort of raised the bottom a little bit, just to make it so there's less space for them to be hiding. This is probably my biggest scoop yet. There's like just hundreds in this net here. If I sort of lift it up here, just look how many fry there are sort of swimming around. There's so many of them. But it's all good, but I just want to get them out of here so they can do quite well. No, I'm probably about 20 or 15 scoops in. And I mean, as you can see, there is just a stupid amount of fry in this tub here. It's kind of hard to get it all on camera because a lot of them are sat at the bottom currently. But yeah, there is just a stupid amount of fry in here. And with the vat, I've really pulled up the cloth at the bottom. I pulled it up quite high now so that you can see the bottom. And even then, with each scoop, I'm still getting about 100 fish. So there is a lot more than 1,000 in here. I thought there was about 1,000, 2,000 in here. There's probably close to 4,000 still in here. Well, not in here still, like in there and there. But yeah, there's a lot more fish in here than I expected. No, I'm probably about 20 or 15 scoops in. And I mean, as you can see, there is just a stupid amount of fry in this tub here. It's kind of hard to get it all on camera because a lot of them are sat at the bottom currently. So after about 30 or 40 scoops, I've managed to get out a decent contingent of the fry. I'd say about 90 to 80% of them, probably actually 95-ish% of them have already come out of here. Now there is still a few stragglers left in this net here, but I'll deal with these guys later because I want to try and get, you know, the vast majority that I've got now sort of sitting in this tub here. It's kind of hard to show you, but they're very hard to see. But basically the plan is to try and get these guys, you know, just straight over now. To start off with, I'm going to just take a scoop out with this net here, and then take what I get from that scoop and place it in the pond outside. I'm just going to take a small scoop. I don't want too many.
Yeah, I reckon that'll do it. I might get a little bit more actually, because I'd like to have at least a couple hundred maybe for that tub out there. Yeah, we'll take these guys around now. And then they all go into their new home. This is probably the maximum amount I'll release in here. And now I'm going to put the rest into the big pond over on the other side. Now I've just caught the rest of the fish that were left in here, and now I've got to move this all the way over there. I mean, I could probably carry it, but you know, I'm not going to do that to myself. So I'm going to grab a wheelbarrow, chuck it in the wheelbarrow, and then just take it round to that section over there.
And then it was finally time to release the fry. I decided just to tip them straight in, and as you can see, there was really just thousands in here. I reckon about 4,000 or 5,000 fry were in the net at that time. And just wait, because this isn't even the main amount of them. As you get towards the bottom, you'll start to see a huge cloud of fry come out of this tub here. There you go. I mean, just look at the amount of fry coming out there. Now, the hope is they'll do quite well in here. I see no issues why. It's quite a nice pond full of sort of natural forage for them to eat, and they should do quite fine in here. There's plenty of room. So, you know, fingers crossed I can get some good growth out of them, and it can be a good home spawning. Well, that's the hope anyway. And in no time at all, they were already on the side of the pond, sort of gently nipping around at the algae and such. That was a great sign really, just to see that they'd already sort of started to settle in. They were grouping up quite nicely, and that was always a good sign to see. Just have to keep my fingers crossed that I can get enough of these to grow to about 1 inch in size, because then I can really start to do a proper nice home spawning and get some nice results from it. Like I said, this is just for fun really. I'm not really doing this for any profit reasons. I just like the idea of, you know, having some koi in my pond that, you know, I've produced myself really.
So they really like they settled in quite nicely, and I'm going to let them sit now for a few days, and I'll post an update video on them after those few days to just sort of show you how they're doing really. But, you know, I'm happy now that I've sort of got them all out of there. So that is it for today's video, guys. I hope you did enjoy, and I'll catch you in the next one.